Well, here we go with the first part of a review and critique for your depth of field assignments. You turned in some nice stuff. You certainly got the concept of shallow and deep depth of field down. You may need to start reading instructions a little greater in some cases. But by and large, you did some very, very nice stuff. I don't know how many parts this review is going to take. I'm guessing 3, maybe 4. So what we need to do is get underway right away. Well, here are 2 I'm going to put side by side. Remember, one of the things I asked you was to not just put the camera on something and shoot one with a wide open depth of field and one with a shallow depth of field. These really are the same shot. That's exactly like that. Each one has its own merits. Even if you were going to shoot the same subject, you might have changed up the view just a little. In the shallow depth of field, the shot is right here. You could have concentrated on that. And in the deep depth of field, we really didn't need the whole street in here. We could have concentrated just on the bushes and maybe darkened the street a little bit. So, yes, you got a shallow and a deep depth of field, but we could have done this a little bit better. So let's go on. Well, here's an interesting deep depth of field shot. The thing that is really fascinating about this is how important the posture of your subject is to the story. His head is down, his shoulders are slumped a little. It's almost like in this shot he's trying to decide if he's going to leap off into the deep forever. Perhaps right below him out of sight is a great white just licking its chops, and he's going to end it all. Think how different this shot would have been had he been standing there with his hands on his hips and his head held high. There are a lot of different stories, but once you put a human in them, we are all subject to interpreting what's going on by the way that human is responding, the way he's acting, his body posture. And we do have a small issue with the horizon. That would be easy to fix, but it's something that really needs to be done. And I would probably darken the sky a little bit. Everything is pretty pale. The highlights could have been brought in perhaps a little bit in camera raw. That would have helped a lot just to keep it from having this washed out look. But mostly we're concentrating. He's right here dead in the center in the crosshairs of this shot. He's even formed a sort of crosshair with the horizon line and his body line, and it's almost dead center. So it really starts to remove much of the action, much of the potential dynamics of the shot. So be careful about things like that. So let's grab another one. Well, here we have the shallow depth of field version, and it does do that. The plants starting kind of at the back side of this pot are increasingly going out of focus to where the fence in the background is out of focus. But again, you've got to start thinking, where is the photograph? What is the real point of view? Well, the way this one is lined up, it's kind of right in here. So if this were a little more out of focus, or even if we'd come around a little bit, shot over the pot, turn the rest of this way out of focus, but forced it to be a background, then we could concentrate on it. All of this detail in the fence, the behind it, this foreground item, which is also sharp, starts to detract from where the shot really is. So you've really got to pay attention to those things. The slightest thing will diminish the power of your shot if you're not conscious of it and you don't fix it. Well, this is a nice shot of the campus. I'm not sure where exactly on the A building. There's been so much rebuilding of this. I haven't really looked to see how they've redone all of it. I think I know where this is, but I'm not sure. We used to be over in a building right by it. So this is a nice shot. You've got all of this stuff going on, all of the graphics, the architectural things. I would probably bring this sky down a bit And maybe I would level this roof line so that it's not quite as off plumb as it is. But other than that, this is nice. Just a hair more contrast might make it pop a little better. This is one where probably if we did this simply with a subtle curves adjustment, we can make this really stand out. We'll lighten those highlights just a little, and we'll bring the shadows down just a little. We don't want to lose detail in olive hair. But now with this very, very slight curves adjustment, we can make this pop just a little. Doesn't take much. Let's go on. Well, what's that old saying? Let sleeping dogs lie. In this case, it's so dark, it's so underexposed, and the color is off a bit. It's hard to tell, is he really asleep or not? So the first thing I would do is open it up a little so I could tell. See if that's actually possible. Let's go over and grab a levels command. Oh yeah, his eyes are open. Look at that. And there, by the way, is a much better exposure. If we just did a simple levels correction, we could make this a little more interesting. And then the shot really is here. Is he just bored to tears? Is he stuffed? Is he sad? Hard to tell. But we need to be able to see it. We need to see the eyes and the expression to really make sense of the shot. Well, we had a slight border problem here. I'm not sure where this came from, so I'm going to get rid of that right away. And then we have this portico leading. All of the lines are perfectly leading down to that cross or monument or whatever it is at the end of the walkway. So this really does show that off pretty well. This is a nice shot. There isn't much I would do to this. You've got detail in these highlights. There's no reason to bring that down. We might want to darken this a little bit. Maybe we could read an inscription on there. But overall, this is pretty nicely done. I would probably just get rid of this part. So I might do a very subtle crop into there and live with that. And that would be it. It's a good job. Well, here we have some little seahorses, or in this case, I guess, sand horses out there. It's our shallow depth of field. I think the only thing I would want to do is maybe take the background down some and crop in on this first one. Make the foreground seahorse our shot. And then both use a slightly shallower depth of field and darken this background. I'll bet. I would get rid of the sky really easily and come in here and pick up this color. Go over and set my brush to darken. Take that distraction down a little bit. Then we might brighten it up. Now that I'm looking at it and it's starting to come together, we'll go back to our curves adjustment. We'll brighten that up a bit. Now I'm going to darken that background, prepare this kind of for a combination vignette and softening. Come down over here onto the bottom layer. Darken it a bit. And we can do that really simply. We'll just come over to exposure and drop the exposure somewhat. And I'm going to soften it a bit with just a slight blur. Now we'll come back to our top layer. We'll make that into a layer mask. I'm going to keep my opacity down so I can do this a little at a time. So in one move, I'm going to darken and soften that background a little. And I'm going to do the same for the foreground, just a touch. Now, because this is a soft brush, I've managed to spill a little of that effect over onto the seahorse. So by changing the brush color with my X key, bringing this down to a smaller brush, I can go back and tighten up that line. And now we've got something where the seahorse stands out a little bit. I'm going to do a snapshot. There was our original with all of that other distracting stuff. And here's our final. So we can help this a little bit and make that depth of field even a little shallower to play with. Let's grab another one. Well, here is a beautiful late evening sunset-y type shot. It would be really cool if the moon were bigger, but even since it isn't, this is a nice shot. So the composition is good. The depth of field is perfect. I honestly don't think there's anything I would do to this. I think I would just leave it. If I were going to do anything, I might brighten this cliff up just a little. And the way I would do that is use our ever-present layer mask. I'm going to make this a screen. And now I'm going to use an inverted mask on it. So I'll hold down the Alt key while I click on the layer mask icon. I'm going to use a white brush. And I'm going to zoom into this so I can work a little more precisely. I'm going to set this down even a little bit lower to maybe 20%, 20-30%. First, I'm going to just very slightly overall lighten some of this lighter area. And then I'm going to come in very tightly and lighten some of these textural areas so I can see them a little more. Make it look just a little more like there is some of that sunset on it. Now, let's see how we're looking. Yeah, that brings that out a little bit. I think I would leave this all pretty much like it is. Let me flatten this. Okay, I want to add some of this sunset color onto these cliffs. So I'm going to go pick up this color. I'll set my brush to color. I want this set very lightly. And I just want to add a little bit of that color to it, so it reads just a little more as if that sun is lighting it. And now we'll take a look and see if we've done any good for this. So there was our original, and there's the work we've done to it. So it's very, very subtle, but it can make a huge, big difference as to what we're doing. Well, here's a really nice shot of this leaf, a close-up, shallow depth of field. I'm not altogether sure that I would do anything to it. Let me see quickly if any kind of crop would help this, because our real shot is along this upper edge where it's sharp. Maybe if we reduce this a little bit. Not much. Boy, not much. But a little bit, we can bring this a little more in as our main object. But I wouldn't do much to it. I think it's pretty nice just as it is. I might darken this edge just a little bit. And for us here, I'm going to do it with the burn tool, although I normally don't like using the burn tool. Okay, and that's it. That's all I do to that. I think this is a really beautiful shot. So let's see what else we got. Okay, here's a shot I'm not quite sure what to do with. That t-shirt is a major statement in it, but we're not really sure, based on the picture, what it really is referring to. This building in the background is bright. It's almost as white as his shirt. So it's really drawing our eye toward it. If what it actually is important to the story of this shot, then we need to see it better. If it's not, then we don't need to see it nearly as well as we do. Because I keep wanting to know, what is this? Is it some kind of place of worship? What is this really all about? And I can't tell for sure from here because I don't know where it is. Nor do I know what this refers to. So it's an interesting conceptual portrait, but it leaves me without some of the clues I need to really understand what it's all about. So it's a really good start, but we need to tighten up the concept a little bit. In terms of the technique, shallow depth of field, yeah, you did that pretty well. Well, this shot's bizarre. At first I thought it was just the out of focus area, but when you look at it really closely, there's stuff going on here that's not an out of focus area. These additional elements are like multiple exposures. They're almost as if there was a layer movement, and what we're getting here, and this is a really good place to see it, is haloing that comes from an offset layer, not from something just out of focus. So if it's an attempt to show a shallow depth of field, it was done not in the camera the way we're supposed to. It's done some other way. And because you've got this stuttering repeat of tones, it really can be very distracting. So let's see the other version, which shows the whole idea much better, shows the flower against this background a whole lot better. Now the background does really appear to be soft on focus. I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming that the red in this flower really is this kind of pastel pink against this pastel green, and that's really the point of the whole thing. The only thing I would do is crop out some of this brightness. So let's pull it into Photoshop, and now we'll see what we can do to really make this flower clearly our point of reference here. And that serves us a little better. We don't have all of that bright stuff getting in the way. We could enhance this a little, perhaps. Let me try an overlay layer just to see what it looks like. I'm not sure if this is going to do us any good or not. It's a little much. So I'm going to back off of that and make it a soft light, which is like an overlay except with less strength. And that looks a little better. Here was our original. Here's our layered. And if that was still a little too much, we could bring that down just by dropping the opacity of that soft light layer. But that helps it stand out a little more. Okay, well, here we have a nice beach scene. I'm not sure where this is. First I thought it was Coronado, but I don't think it is. So but it is nice. I love this little troop of seagulls out here looking for something. It would be interesting to know what they're after. But it does show the deep depth of field. There's an interesting story starting to happen in here. I think I might want to concentrate on it a little more. I don't need all of this foreground to make that work. I really don't need all of that. And now I can make us concentrate a little more on all of those birds in front. So it's right almost there, very close. Just move in a little bit with your crop and I think you've got it. Okay, this will be the last one for this first part of the critique. This is a very nice shot of this flower. It would be nice if it were a little bit sharper where it's supposed to be sharp. There might be just the slightest bit of camera movement, which can happen anytime you're doing this sort of macro shot. It takes virtually an unnoticeable amount of movement to still soften an image like this. If it were just focus, then because the foreground is out of focus, the background is out of focus, it means something in between those optically must be focused. Since nothing really is, the closest we get is right about in here, then what that says to me is it's probably a little bit of camera movement. Nevertheless, I also would come in on it. Our real shot is right in there. I like this uplift. This is a really strong movement there, so I don't want to take much of that away. There we go, and now we can really concentrate on this a little better. The color is really beautiful. You did a nice job selecting color and stuff. Again, just really pay attention to where the distracting areas are, what's going to take you away from your real focal point, and make really sure that that focal point is focused. It's okay. We'll get this one put together and then we'll move on to the next one. See you then.